أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء، السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته، السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته، السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي، يا سادتي، فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال مولانا إمام جعفر بن محمد الصادق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: يا داود. This is a piece of advice or a statement from our sixth Imam to one of his companions, Dawood. For the Imam is speaking to Dawood. He says, Ya Dawood, لعن الله قاتل الحسين، ما من عبد شرب الماء فذكر الحسين ولعن قاتله إلا وكتب الله له 100,000 حسنة وحتى عنه 100,000 سيئة. صدق الإمام وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Our sixth Imam, in a conversation with one of his companions, Dawood, tells him, O Dawood, may Allah not have mercy upon the killers of Sayyid al-Shuhada, upon the killers of Imam Hussein. La'an. A strong sentence or a strong word that denotes condemnation and the removal of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. from people like the likes of Yazid and Shamar and Ibn Sa'ad, for the lack of mercy that they had in their hearts. For if they did not have mercy at its minimum level, such that they would be considered human beings, then they themselves do not deserve mercy from Allah. For the sixth Imam says to Dawood, Ya Dawood, there is not a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except that when he drinks water and remembers the thirst of Imam al-Hussein, not only remembers the thirst of Imam Hussein, but sends la'na on the killers of Imam Hussein, while he is quenching his thirst, while he is drinking this water, then the Imam says for that person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes for him 100,000 rewards and forgives for him 100,000 sins. Such a simple action, which we perform multiple times during a daily life. Something as small as drinking a glass of water. Even in this simple action, our Imam tells us, remember Sayyid al-Shuhada. Revive his affairs and keep Karbala alive in your mind, even when you drink water. Before we begin today's discussion, based on the theme or on the instructions of the Imam to keep alive the memory of Karbala, not only within our minds or within the parameters of our family or the circles of our community, it becomes important for us to pass on the message of Sayyid al-Shuhada to our neighbors and to our colleagues, the people whom we live around. And we have a responsibility towards ensuring that the world becomes aware of the great sacrifice and the noble causes for which Sayyid al-Shuhada gave his life. We must participate in this. Sayyida Zainab told our fourth Imam, Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein Zainul Abidin, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, when they were leaving Karbala, she said to him, my nephew, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken a pledge from people who are known in the heavens, who will raise a banner on this land of tough Karbala and ensure that his remembrance is never obliterated. فإحنا, if we want to be within this community that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Sayyida Zainab has promised Imam Sajjad that Allah will deliver through them, we need to take a very small effort in passing the message to the people that live around us. There are leaflets, I understand, that are going to be distributed today, packs of 20 or 30 leaflets in envelopes to be distributed to, if each person would like to distribute these to his neighbors. This will be a step and a contribution of yours in serving the cause of Sayyid al-Shuhada. On the night of Ashura, there is a julus that has been planned, a procession. And it is important to participate in these processions with all the adab and with all the akhlaq that is applicable. For one simple reason. Regardless of whether this procession attracts people towards Islam or people convert or not convert, this is a secondary issue. But for a person to stand on the street and join the procession and walk in commemoration of Sayyid al-Shuhada, at least at the very minimum, On the day of judgment, he can stand in the mahshar and tell Sayyidah Zahra, I ensured the dhikr of your son in the land in which I lived. He can say to Sayyidah Zahra, in this particular year, 2012, I didn't have the opportunity to go to Karbala, but I ensured that the dhikr of your son was announced thousands of miles away in Karbala. And this is a very humble gesture of gratitude to Ahlul Bayt for what they have given us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Today being the 7th of Muharram, as in the day, marks a historic day and a day that was filled with tragedies, or a new tragedy in the pages of the history of Ahlul Bayt. As you may know, that when Sayyid al-Shuhada arrived in Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram, from the 2nd of Muharram each day until the day of Ashura, the siege around Sayyid al-Shuhada intensified. The number of the enemies kept increasing by the thousands, and their interactions and their words became sterner and more rough with Sayyid al-Shuhada. The atrocities that they began to commit verbally and through their actions increased as the days got closer to Ashura. And one of these days that marked the gruesomeness of Karbala was on a day like this, the 7th of Muharram, because in our traditions it is mentioned that on the 7th day, the army of Ibn Sa'ad and Shimr refused the camp of Sayyid al-Shuhada access to water. For from today, say morning or afternoon, till this very moment, if you are reliving history in your minds, the children of Ahlul Bayt have been thirsty. Right now they are thirsty. Tomorrow they will be thirsty. And the day after they will be thirsty and hungry. Ehna today, in a regular day like this, how many times do we drink water? Multiple times. How do we feel thirsty? A number of times during a day. Despite it being the winter, we drink water at least 3 to 4 times minimum. Then how about the children of Ali Muhammad under the scorching desert? Who is there from the Shias to remember the thirst of Ali Muhammad during these days? We have a responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this responsibility is to uphold the grief of Ali Muhammad and the grief of Karbala. For we need to ask ourselves as we live these days, the 7th and the 8th and the 9th and the 10th, does our conduct reflect our grief? And let us work hard to ensure that it does so. Water is a global ni'mah granted to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense that it is a vital ni'mah which plays an important role in the alam of takween and in the alam of tashri'. Alam of takween, yani water plays an important role in the realm of creation and in the realm of existence. And at the same time, water plays an important role in the alam of tashri', meaning in the realm of religion. This because of the property of water, in that it is a vital ni'mah or mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And water has such a property or such a characteristic such that everything within the realm of existence depends on water for its nourishment, for it to flourish, for it to come into existence. It is dependent upon water. For this reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He created the earth, He ensured that there would be enough water in terms of water supply for everything within the realm of existence to exist. From the plant kingdom to the animal kingdom to mankind, which is why you will see that the proportion or the percentage of water compared to earth in terms of mass, water is more than earth or land. For everything within the realm of existence is dependent upon water. And because it is dependent upon water, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given every classification of creation a certain right towards water. For example, within the plant kingdom in itself, the plants and the trees and the crops have a right to be watered. Look at this tradition by Rasulullah, narrated on authority of Rasulullah in Wasa'il al-Shi'a. It is narrated that the Prophet said, "Man saka talhatan aw sidratan faka'annama saka mu'minan min ad-dhima." Rasulullah says that a person who waters a plant or waters a tree is as if he has quenched the thirst of a thirsty mu'min. Look at the importance given by Islam in watering plants and in watering trees. To these, from this narration, able to deduce that watering a plant or watering a tree in itself is desirable, yani mustahab. And in certain situations or certain circumstances, it becomes wajib to water a plant or to water a tree. Ajib, wajib. When you say wajib, the connotation over here is from the term of wajib fiqhi, in that it is an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if somebody leaves it out, he is liable for punishment. In which situation is watering a tree or a plant or a crop wajib? It becomes wajib especially if the food supply of a population is dependent upon the harvest of that crop. For in that situation, it becomes wajib to water the crops at that time or water the plants, because to contribute towards the reduction of the food supply in itself is a sin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create mankind such that they can starve. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create mankind with restricted minimal resources such that man needs to struggle to fulfill their daily needs. This is one of the contradictory points that Islam as an economic system poses. It's an objection that the Islamic economic system poses towards contemporary economists, because you have economists such as Adam Smith, for example. He's known as the father of modern economics, who is of the opinion that natural resources are scarce. Because they are limited, world powers or forces must move in order to capture these resources. They must compete with each other to capture these resources, and from here the principles of demand and supply are derived. Whereas Islam, or the point of view from an Islamic economic system, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create man with limited resources. La, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that if you were to count my ni'mah, if you were to try and count my bounties, you would not be able to count them through natural resources. For there is no scarcity of natural resources. The problem is in the distribution and the management of natural resources. For on one side, for everything within the plant kingdom has a right over water, and this right over water is sometimes within the manifestation of istihbab, and sometimes within the manifestation of a wujub, regardless of whether it is wajib kifai or wajib aini. This in itself is a different debate altogether. And you will see, for this reason, one of the major tasks of the government of the 12th Imam, when he reappears, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, is that he is going to formulate and is going to implement a majority of reforms even within the field of agriculture. One of the techniques that our 12th Imam will use to eradicate global poverty, one of the techniques that he will use to achieve this goal is by implementing breakthrough technology within the field of agriculture. And within the field of agriculture, he will come forth with innovative methods of irrigation such that dead land can be revived back together and production of food in itself would increase. This is one of the steps or one of the methods in which the 12th Imam is going to eradicate world poverty. And we have a number of traditions from our 5th Imam and from Amirul Mu'mineen that suggest or that explain to us clearly that when the 12th Imam reappears, he will order for the river Furat to be rechanneled such that from the river Furat and through its rechannelment, irrigation schemes may be implemented such that barren lands within the outskirts of Syria and Iraq shall be able to benefit from farming. To the extent that Amirul Mu'mineen says, حتى لا تمشي المرأة بين العراق والشام إلا وتضع قدميها على النبات. The Amir says that the extent of greenery and development of the land in terms of its natural resources and plants and harvest will be to such an extent from the barakah of River Furat that if a woman were to walk from Iraq to Sham, she would not set foot except on green land. If you look at the current geography right now, the people who have traveled to Iraq or have traveled to Sham, the areas of Raqqa that border towards Syria and Iraq, or even those people who used to be able to go for Zyara, from Damascus you go towards where Siffin was passing through Hams, you will find that majority of Syria on that side is barren land, it's desert. This type of land is not productive, cannot be utilized for farming. You go further to the borders of Iraq and into the outskirts of Iraq, desert land, barren, it's not been able to be used. Yet you will see when the 12th Imam comes, he implements agricultural policies such that every corner of the earth may be used for farming. Majority of the land will be suitable for agriculture. This is also one of the important tasks of an Islamic government, that when an Islamic government comes forward, it pays attention to irrigation schemes, it pays attention and strikes the balance between urbanization and preservation of farming land. Which is one of the tasks of the Islamic government. These were one of the tasks of Amirul Mu'mineen when he was granted the apparent or the Zahir Khilafah. Many times when you look into the budgeting system of Amirul Mu'mineen when he led his government, you will find from all the taxes that were collected, there was a particular tax called the land tax, Khazraj, that was collected from the farmers. These taxes were used in order to pay for the provincial expenses of the government, because every province had a government or government institute that was running their duties. For Amirul Mu'mineen from Kufa headed the central government, so all these smaller federal states, you could say, had their own budget or their own income derived from the land tax of the farmers. And this land tax that would be deduced from the farmers would be dependent upon the fertility of the land. So that, look at the wisdom of Amirul Mu'mineen, the provincial government can only get income which is proportional to the fertility of the land. Therefore, if the provincial government went into a deficit in that the income that they are receiving is not enough because of lack of fertility of the fields, and they would go to seek a surplus from Amirul Mu'mineen at the central government, Amirul Mu'mineen at the center would tell them, you as head of the provincial government, why are you in deficit? Because the lands are not fertile. Why are the lands not fertile? Go go and work towards irrigation of the lands. From here, you see the relationship between the government and the people, the benefit of the farmers, the maslihah, the well-being, the prosperity of the farmers and the citizens of the state in general are correlated or tied with the prosperity of the government itself, the income of the government itself. If the people do well, the government does well. Wish that the government is extracting taxes from the people and living on fat salaries and living luxurious lives while the citizens and the farmers and the industrialists are suffering and dying of hunger. La, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. All this in regards to the rights of plants when it comes to water. And then you move into the animal kingdom. You see, even within the animal kingdom, Islam has given us a number of traditions and a number of guidelines over how we should treat the animals. Where are the Muslim countries when it comes to animal rights? It is even a shame for us to come here and speak about animal rights when human rights are not observed within certain so-called Islamic countries. Ala kullin. Islam in its pure sense, Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt give us guidelines on how Islam gives us guidelines over how animals should be treated in regards to water. To the extent that we have traditions from Rasulullah that state that when you are traveling or embark upon a journey, then begin your journey by feeding your horse or your camel with water. Do not tire out your animal as you embark a journey, but stop in between at regular intervals to give a chance to your animal to drink water. Allah, the rules of fiqh when it comes to dhabiha, out of etiquette and mercy, the Sharia tells us that before you slaughter a cow or a sheep or any animal, feed it water before you slaughter it. Ajib, the rights of animals when it comes to Islam. The Sharia rules of fiqh tell us that if you are in a situation where you have a limited amount of water and the time of salah sets in, and with you or around you, you have an animal that is suffering from thirst or dying from thirst, then in that situation you do not use your water to do wudu and recite salah. You give this water to the animal to save the life of the animal, and you yourself perform tayammum to recite salah. Look at the importance given to the preservation of life, regardless of whether it is in the human field, mankind, or animal. For the rights of the animals to access of water are in plenty within Islam. And if all this is the case in regards to rights of water, such that for a plant and for an animal it can become wajib, then what about the rights of mankind when it comes to water? It becomes wajib for you to perform tayammum in order to save the life of an animal. Then tell me, in Karbala on a day like this, on the 7th of Muharram, how is it that people like Shimr and Ibn Sa'ad did wudu at the river Furat while they heard the women and the children of Ahlul Bayt crying, Al-Atash, Al-Atash? Which salah did they pray, and which Lord will accept their salah? But when it comes to the rights of mankind and human beings to water, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed the access of water in the form of natural resources, such that each and every person has equal access to drinking water. In fact, one of the responsibilities of an Islamic government that follows the madhab of Ahlul Bayt is to ensure that there is clean and safe drinking water for each and every one of its citizens, which is why certain fuqaha within the school of within our madhab have even given out rulings that it becomes haram to pollute a source of water. It becomes haram to pollute the rivers and the oceans, because we are distorting or we are contaminating a source of life for the Muslim Ummah. This is in regards to preservation of water. But as we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed water as an abundant ni'mah because of its property in that it is essential to life. Allah has placed it in the form of a natural resource. A natural resource under Islamic law, Islamic economic law, a natural resource cannot be privatized. Why? Because the well-being and the collective good of the Muslim Ummah is by extracting or benefiting from the benefits of these natural resources. Therefore, water as a natural resource cannot be privatized, which is why some of our ulama have debates and they have ishkal that under the government of the 12th Imam, will there be bottled water for sale? Abadan. Water is a resource. Water is a right for man such that it cannot even be sold. Look at the thinking of Islam when it comes to economy and certain basic services that must be provided for the community. On the topic of natural resources, the relationship of natural resources and the countries in which they fall and the benefit of the states is something that is strange. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says that we have created the world for you. And the government, for you as in for the natural resources and any benefit that can be derived from the earth, this benefit goes back to the citizens of the state or to humankind in its entirety. If we understand this, then the role of the government is between the people and these natural resources is that the government is nothing but a proxy that enables man to deduce maximum benefit from these natural resources. One of them being water, one of them being oil. Oil is a natural resource, correct or not, a natural resource, a ni'mah given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To who? Did Allah give oil to a particular kingdom? Did Allah give this oil to a particular tribe or to a particular heir or to a particular king, saying that this is my ni'mah towards you and use it the way you want? Abadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put natural resources, one of them being water, one of them being oil, as a means of wealth for the general public and the citizens of the state. Which is why we ask these people in the Gulf kingdoms who wear the guise or wear the gown of Islam and the clothes of Islam, where is this oil money being used when it comes to the affairs of the citizens? Why is it that a country like Arabia, that is the highest or the biggest exporter of crude oil, why do they have 20% illiteracy rate, or 20% of the people within the Arabian country are living below the poverty line? Below the poverty line, a country that yields more than $400 billion a year. This wealth that is deduced from here is not the wealth of the kingdom, is not the wealth of this family, is the wealth of the Muslim Ummah. This is a ni'mah given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the Muslims. These were the sentiments and the ideas that Sayyid al-Shuhada was against. When he came out of Medina, he said, I stand up to reform the ummah of my father and to bring back the sunnah of my grandfather and my father, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Management of these natural resources, the benefits and the monetary value extracted from these natural resources need to be reinvested towards the citizens of the state, towards the Muslim Ummah in general, to propagate the cause of Islam. And when people learn about these lofty values and take inspiration from Sayyid al-Shuhada to stand up and say no to dhulm, doesn't mean that it needs to be in a violent way. To stand up to dhulm means to be in a firm state of mind where you have determination. You will not be used as a tool, neither will you be used as neither will you be treated as a fool. You will stand up for what is right and what is wrong. And because these Majalis Husseini give us this fervor and give us these electric emotions, you will see every tyrant government that has stopped the Majlis Husseini have stopped for this reason. Because they understood that the commemoration of the event of Karbala and the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada was not the commemoration of a battle between two individual personalities, one called Hussein and one called Yazid, but it is the commemoration of a battle that represented ultimate truth on one side and the ultimate or the peak of falsehood on the other side. And this commemoration of Karbala is a stance against every zalim in every age, every tyrant and every oppressor in every age. And there is no bigger stimulus to stand up against oppression except through seeking inspiration from the event of Karbala. For this reason, you will find every tyrant, the first thing that they do when they have Shia wujud or Shia population within their boundaries is that they will stop Majlis Husseini. Look at Iraq when Saddam came into power, La'in, as head of the Ba'ath party. What was one of the first things that Saddam did in order to bring down a majority Shia population? A lot of the news and political or current events at that time used to tell us that the Shia are only 55 or 60% in Iraq. Haramat. The real percentage of Shias inside Iraq from the beginning of time ranged between 70 to 75%. Mish 50 or 60. In any case, what is the first thing that Saddam did? He closed down the Majlis Husseini. For over 30 to 40 years, it became a punishment, or it became a crime punishable by death if a person held Majlis Husseini in their house. This tea that you drink, they used to call them, or they still call them, the chai Abu Ali, the chai of Sayyid al-Shuhada. For you to stand outside your house or go to your neighbors and serve this chai as tabarruk for Imam Hussein, without majlis, without matam, just to serve this tea, you are liable to death for that. You're liable to death for that. You look into the majority of the countries that are against Shiaism because they understand. Not only understand, they fear the potential of the power of the Majlis Husseini and the power that it has to make the populations rise against dhulm. Which is why it is no coincidence that when our 12th Imam reappears, he will come out chanting the slogan, Ya litharat al-Hussein, vengeance for Sayyid al-Shuhada, and the people who hijacked Islam at the expense of the blood of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Sayyid al-Shuhada had a right to accessing the water of Furat from a number of perspectives, from a number of dimensions. Number one, it was the right of Imam to drink from the Furat, because the Furat, or the river Furat in itself, is a natural river, and according to the laws of Islam, nobody has the right to take control over a natural resource, as we said, such as a river or a lake or an island for that case, and deny people any benefit from that, especially when it is a free-flowing resource such as water. So Sayyid al-Shuhada, just like the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it a man-made right or a God-given right for all mankind to benefit from rivers and oceans and lakes, Sayyid al-Shuhada also had a right in that, to access water, in that nobody has the right to privatize or to deny anybody benefit from a natural resource. This is number one. Number two, Sayyid al-Shuhada had a bigger right towards water compared to all other Kufans for a number of reasons, for three particular reasons. The first reason is that the same Kufans who prohibited the Imam from drinking water, during the Khilafah of Amirul Mu'mineen, there was a drought that had hit Kufa. and rain had not fallen for a number of years. This is even before Sayyid al-Shuhada, or before Amir al-Mu'mineen became the governor of Kufa. There was a severe drought in Kufa. The people were literally dying of hunger. Inflation had risen. Prices of food and grain and crop had gone high. The farmers were not able to yield anything at that time. They came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, the citizens of Kufa, and they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, can you come out of the city into the fields and recite the salat for rain, salatul istisqa for us, such that hopefully maybe by your prayers and by your intercession, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may descend His mercy upon us. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes out, but do you know who he takes with him for Salatul Istisqa? He takes Sayyid al-Shuhada with him. When they stood together for this Salat of rain, the traditions tell us that when Sayyid al-Shuhada lifted his hands towards the skies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descended down rainfall in a way that Kufa had never seen. At the very minimum, they should have allowed Sayyid al-Shuhada access to Furat, at least as a minimum, to return the favor for what he did for them in the city of Kufa. This was number one. Number two, during the battle of Siffin, when Muawiyah met with the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen, it is narrated that they met at a place between the border between Iraq and Syria. For Muawiyah had placed a siege when they reached the battle area of Siffin. Muawiyah had placed a siege around the river Furat. From here we understand that to place a siege and to attempt to kill your enemy or your opposition from thirst was not a technique that was new to Yazid, but it was a technique that he had inherited from his father, the La'in, the son of a La'in. In either way, when Muawiyah went and placed the siege around the river Furat during the battle of Siffin, the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen reaches. The army is devastated. The army is exhausted from thirst, having cut such a big distance from Kufa towards the border of Syria. At that time, what does Amir al-Mu'mineen do? He sends a contingency to go and fight and gain control over the river Furat. In this contingency, he sends Muhammad ibn Hanafiya and Sayyid al-Shuhada. They go with a contingency of 70 to 80 men. A war breaks out, or a battle breaks out at the bank of the river Furat. The contingency of Amir al-Mu'mineen gains victory. Under the banner of Muhammad Hanafiya and Sayyid al-Shuhada, they gain control over the river Furat. What does the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen do? Do they also deny the army of Muawiyah access to water? La! Its companions came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, now we have control over the Furat. Let us kill them of thirst such that we may weaken them. Let them experience thirst such that we may easily defeat them. Amir al-Mu'mineen, it is narrated, looked at this companion. He drew a line on the sand and he said that this is the difference between me and the Muawiyah. Give them access to water. One of the people to feed them water was Sayyid al-Shuhada. The same Kufan army that was fed with water at Siffin through the hands of Imam Hussein are the same people today who have come to deny him access of water. At the very minimum, through gratitude, they should have given access to Sayyid al-Shuhada. Hi, number two. Number three, the army of Hur. Hur had a contingency of 1,000 horsemen with him. It is narrated when he intercepted Sayyid al-Shuhada on the distance between Makkah and the Kufa, the army of Hur was literally drained and dying of thirst. Look into the books of history. They will tell you that some of the men, horsemen that were within the army of Hur, their lips were parched and their eyes were sunk in because of the heat and the extreme thirst. At this time, Sayyid al-Shuhada went with his blessed hand, quenched the thirst of the people. Not only did he quench their thirst, but he quenched the thirst of their horses. 1,000 Kufan men at the very minimum on the 7th of Muharram, they should have allowed Imam Hussein access to water, at the minimum out of shukr, to return the favor. But these were men who did not have any principles within the realm of humanity, which is why they are deserving of a la'anah. Above all this, above all these were rights of Sayyid al-Shuhada, in that he deserved the water. But there was one bigger right that supersedes every right. And that right is that this river Furat, this is a divine river whose divinity is greater than the Zamzam. Allah asked, why is Furat more divine than the Zamzam? Because narrators have mentioned that the river Furat was a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Sayyid al-Zahra as part of her mahar. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The river of Kawthar is a river given to Allah, given by Allah to Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen in Jannah. But the Furat was a river due to the humility and the humbleness of Sayyid al-Zahra and the mahar that she asked for Amirul Mu'mineen. Allah bestowed her with this river. And we shouldn't be surprised. How can Allah give a river to Sayyid al-Zahra? The river Furat is a very small thing that Allah has given to Sayyid al-Zahra and Ahlul Bayt. Do we not read in Hadithul Qisa where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inni ma khalaqtu sama'an mabaniya, wala ardan madhiya, wala kamaran munira, wala shamsan mudhiya, wala bahran yajri, wala bahran yajri, ولا فلكا يجري ولا فلكا تسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء خمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء فقال أمين الجبرائيل ومن تحت الكساء فقال الله عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. If a person comes and tells you, how can Allah have given Furat to Sayyid al-Zahra, you tell him Furat is a small thing. Allah has created everything within the realm of existence for Fatima, her father, her husband, and her children. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. For in addition to this, they really never had a right to deny Sayyid al-Shuhada or place a siege around him for Furat. In addition to this, we have in our narrations, do you see where the Haram Sharif of Sayyid al-Shuhada lies? It is narrated that when Imam reached this land on the 2nd of Muharram, he bought this area of Karbala, which was a span or an area of 4 miles by 4 miles. This whole area, Sayyid al-Shuhada purchased it from the residents of Nainawa and then gifted it back in Sadaqah. But in terms of personal property, he owned the land of Karbala, which is why till today we say the owner of Karbala is Sayyid al-Shuhada. And based upon this, our 6th Imam says that Karbala is halal for the lovers of Ahlul Bayt and is haram for their enemies. To enter for a person who is a nasibi, who holds hatred in his heart for Sayyid al-Shuhada, it becomes haram for him to step into Karbala. For him to put his foot on the land of Karbala, he has put his foot on a land which is ghasb. Allah for Karbala. When you speak about water and you think about water, for every mu'min, the name Abbas comes into mind. Whenever you hear thirst, the name Abbas comes into mind. And who can comprehend who Abbas is? Which words can you use to describe the personality of Abbas? In reality, Abbas cannot be comprehended by the human mind because the human mind is limited, but the magnificence and grandeur of Abbas is unrestricted by time or space. Which words can you use to describe Sayyid al-Shuhada? The magnificence of Sayyid al-Shuhada cannot be captured or captivated by words. Do not understand or do not say that Abbas was courageous. Do not try to understand the word, or do not try to understand Abbas by using the word courage. Rather, understand the word courage by looking at the seerah of Abbas. Do not say that Abbas was a person who had sabr, because if sabr or patience was to come in front of Abbas, the patience would say, I am shy in front of Abbas. Abul Fadl al-Abbas demonstrated courage a number of times during his life in a number of different ways. Sometimes a person shows courage through his bravery on the battlefield. But many times a person shows courage when he keeps silent in a situation where he has the power to take his right but decides not to take his right. Sabr, courage through sabr. And one of the most difficult instances for Sayyid al-Shuhada during his lifetime was during the martyrdom of his brother Imam al-Hassan. Because the traditions tell us, as they came out with the bier or the coffin of Imam al-Hassan going towards the haram of Rasulullah, then at that time Aisha together with the rest of the Bani Marwan refused for Imam Hassan to be buried within the precincts of Rasulullah. What did they do? They started to shoot arrows at the coffin of Imam Hassan. The narrations tell us that at that time the arrows pierced the body of Imam al-Hassan. Do you know what happened at that time? At that time, the traditions tell us that Abul Fadl al-Abbas, who was carrying one side of the janazah, stood up and said, Ya Bani Hashim, how dare you stand over here while the janazah or the coffin of my brother Abbas is being attacked. The traditions tell us Abbas stood at the front of the janazah and removed his sword. Who can come from Bani Umayyah? Who dares attack the body of Hassan while Abbas is alive? Do you know what happened at that time? The traditions tell us that Sayyid al-Shuhada came towards Sayyid al-Shuhada came towards Abul Fadl al-Abbas. He put his hands on his shoulders, and then the traditions tell us فَضَمَّهُ عَلَى صَدْرِهِ وَكَبَّلَهُ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ وَقَالَ لَهُ لَيْسَ هَذَا الْيَوْمِ لَكَ يَا عَبَّاسِ لَكَ يَوْمٌ أَعْظَمُ مِنْ هَذَا الْيَوْمِ. At that time, the rage within Abbas was so much. How dare they perform this crime of shooting arrows at the dead body of my brother? And I have the power. I can overcome them just now. Despite this, Abbas had to contain himself. Do you know how he contained himself? Sayyid al-Shuhada went, the traditions tell us, Sayyid al-Shuhada just hugged him. Just hugged him to release him, to calm him down. And then he kissed Abul Fadl al-Abbas between the eyes on the forehead, and he told him, Abbas, you have a day which is much greater than... He says, Abbas, you have a day which is much greater than this. I don't know how Abbas stood between the camps of the children for 3 days, watching them cry out of thirst and scream out of thirst. It was Abbas's patience when he had to move the tents from Furat to where they finally were on the day of Ashura, or towards the 7th of Muharram. And it is as if at that time Abul Fadl Abbas looked at Imam Hussein. He said, Ya Mawlaya, Ya Aba Abdullah, I am enough to take care of them. I am enough to fight them. Why should we move our tents? Sayyid al-Shuhada tells him, Sabr ya Abul Fadl al-Abbas. I don't know with which heart Abul Fadl went towards the back and started digging wells for water to come out, knowing that it is his right to have access to the water, but he kept quiet. The traditions tell us that the day of Ashura, as the battle intensified one by one, The people of Bani Hashim gave their life in the way of martyrdom. Until at one point, as the children of Sayyidah Zainab, as On and Muhammad were asking for permission, as Abdullah ibn Muslim was asking for permission, as Ali al-Akbar was asking for permission, at one time Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas went to ask permission. He says, Ya Sayyid al-Shuhada, these are my nephews. I have seen them grow up in front of me. How can I see them be killed in front of me like this? He says, my master, give me permission to go out and fight. For Sayyid al-Shuhada tells him, my brother Abbas, but you are the commander of this army. He says, my brother Abu al-Fadil, you are the flag bearer. Abbas, if you fall, the whole army has fallen. Abbas, if you are not there, it is as if the entire army is not there. For Abu al-Fadil kept patient and became a pillar of support for Sayyid al-Shuhada, comforting him at every stage. When Imam Hussein brought back the body of Ali al-Akbar, it was Abbas who gave him comfort. When the Imam Hussein brought back the body of Qasim, it is Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas who gave him comfort. The day of Ashura went as it went, until there remained no adult in the khayma except Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam Sajjad and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. At this stage, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas goes towards Sayyid al-Shuhada and he says to him, Ya Mawlaya, Ya Sayyidi, Ali min rukhsa. He says, is there permission for me to go into the battlefield? The traditions tell us before Sayyid al-Shuhada could say anything, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas went down on his knees and kissed the feet of Sayyid al-Shuhada. And he said to him, قَدْ ذَاكَ صَدْرِي مِنْ هَذِهِ الْمُنَافِقِينَ. He says, my chest, I cannot bear inside my heart the atrocities of these munafiqeen. At this time, the wailing of the children intensifies. Over here, Ruqayya and Sakina and Hamida are crying, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. Imam Hussein looks towards the tent. He looks at Abu al-Fadil. He puts his hand on his shoulders and kisses him on the forehead and tells him, then Abbas, go and fetch water for the children. Abbas goes into the tents and he takes his water bag, the mashk, and he puts it around his right shoulder. He goes on and puts his helmet and wears his battle gear. He kisses the hand of Sayyid al-Shuhada for the last time. He gets on towards his horse. The children and the women of Bani Hashim now know that Abu al-Fadil is going towards the battlefield to fetch water. This is Abu al-Fadil, that undefeated warrior that the face of Hijaz has never seen before. Sukaina, Ruqayya, Hamida, all of them are confident that their thirst is going to be quenched very soon. So they all, Sukaina or Ruqayya goes, the youngest daughter of Sayyid al-Shuhada. She gathers all the children towards the front of the tent and she says, hold your cups or your flasks with you. My uncle Abbas is going to come back with the water. Allah, Allah. Imam Hussein stands at the front of the camp. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas mounts his horse. Bismillah wa billah wa fi sabilillah wa fi millati rasulillah. He has his mashk or his water flask with him. He has the flag with him. He has his sword in the other hand. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas comes into the Maidan for jihad. Allah, Allah. Over here the traditions tell us that when he rode into the battlefield, he recited the poem saying, Uqatilul qawma biqalbi muhtadin adhibbu an sibtin nabiyyi ahmadin adribkum bis-sarim al-muhannadi hatta tuhilu an kitali sayyidi. He says to them that I have come into the battlefield doing jihad with a heart of guidance, and I will fight you until you disperse from killing my master Hussein. He says, Inni ana al-Abbas he says, I am Abbas, Najlu Aliyin al-Murtada al-Mu'ayyadi. I am the son of Amirul Mu'mineen, the one who was helped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The narrations tell us that Abbas rode into the battlefield and he attacked the right side of the army like a raging lion. He dismantled the right wing and then he attacked the left wing. He also dismantled the left wing, and this time the army of Ibn Ziyad is in chaos. The right moves towards the left moves towards the right. Everyone is retreating in every direction. Abul Fadil races towards between the two flanks of the army, and then the traditions tell us that Shimar had posted 4,000 archers guarding the Furat. At that time the traditions tell us that Abul Fadl al-Abbas came upon them just like the way the tides of an ocean come crashing against the shore. Abul Fadil attacked them like a lion, to the extent that the archers retreated and all of them abandoned their post. Abul Fadil Abbas has reached Furat. The son of Ali has conquered Furat. The army watched Abbas from a distance in cowardice, not knowing what to do or how to react. A lot of them thought that this is Haydar and Amirul Mu'mineen of Siffin who has come to fight them, not Abbas. They said, Wailakum, how did Ali from the heavens descend down to fight against us? Abbas reaches the Furat and he gets off his horse. The traditions tell us that he picked up a handful of water in his hand. He looked at this water as if to say to the enemies that this is what you have denied us from, we have conquered it. And over here the eternal words of Abul Fadl al-Abbas are narrated and recorded. Ikhwani ya Shia, I want to take you back to Karbala, as if you were watching Abul Fadl al-Abbas do his jihad, and walk with him step by step and watch the way Abbas was martyred. Allah, the traditions tell us that Abul Fadil stood in the Furat, he lifted up a cup or a handful of water, and he looked at the water and he said, Ya nafsu ba'da al-Husayni huni. يا نفس بعد الحسين هوني ولا كنت أن تكوني هذا الحسين وارد المنون وتشربين بارد المعين. He says, this is Hussein. What reason is there to live after him? What goodness is there in life after Hussein? How can I drink this water while Hussein is under siege? La wallah, Abul Fadl says, La wallah, ma hadha min fi'alu dini, ma hadha min fi'alu sadiq al-yaqini. Abul Fadl says, for me to drink water while Hussein is thirsty, while Ali Asghar is thirsty, this is not from the actions of a person who is loyal or truthful in faith. Abbas throws the water. Traditions tell us Abul Fadil collected the water in the mashk and put it around his shoulder, mounted his horse, the sword on one hand, the alam on the other hand. By this time, because Abul Fadl al-Abbas is at the river bank, she's in the Furat, Sayyid al-Shuhada was not able to see Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein was not able to see Abul Fadl al-Abbas. The children were also not able to see Abul Fadl al-Abbas. The only way they would tell that Abul Fadl al-Abbas is approaching them is when they would look at the alam flying high in the distant skies. As long as that alam is standing, they know that Abul Fadl al-Abbas is approaching. Allah, the traditions tell us that as Abul Fadl came out, mounted his horse and stepped out from the Furat, Shimar regrouped his army and he said to Ibn Sa'ad that wallah, if this water reaches the tent of Hussein and if Hussein drinks from it, we will not be able to defeat them in the army, or we will not be able to defeat them in the war today. For Shimar said to Ibn Sa'ad, send a contingency to attack Abbas. Ibn Sa'ad says, how can we send people to fight Abbas? Have you not seen that he is the son of Haydar? Everyone is reluctant to come close to Abbas. This is the son of Amirul Mu'mineen. He was born to defend Imam Hussein. He was born to fight on a day like Karbala. So the traditions tell us that Shimr arranged his entire army to form a barrier between Abbas and the tents of Imam al-Hussein. They stood there from a distance watching what Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas would do. So the traditions tell us that Abbas mounted his horse and he began to ride towards the enemy, knowing that this is the only barrier between me and getting the water to Sukaina and Ruqayya. At that time, as Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas approached them, the army of Shimr is at a distance. Because none of them have the courage to attack Abbas, Shimr orders for all the archers to begin shooting their arrows in the direction of Abbas. Hundreds of arrows fall on Abbas. Abbas is not worried of his life. Abbas is worried about safeguarding this water that is with him. The traditions tell us that he guarded the mosque with his shield and continued to move forward. But because he was not able to ride quickly as the arrows were falling on him in all directions, at this time there was one la'in by the name of Zayd ibn Zurqa. He went and he hid behind a palm tree waiting in ambush as Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas rode past him. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. Zayd ibn Zurqa came from behind and he struck the right arm of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. He severed the arm of Abbas. Allah, Allah, the hand of Abbas fell to the ground. At this time it is narrated that Abbas took the sword and the flag on his left hand. The mashk is still around his shoulder. The enemies thought that if we have cut this person's right hand, his determination will become weak. He will not be able to fight. But at that time, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas recited the poem showing his determination. He says, وَإِن كَتَعْتُمُ يَمِينِي إِنِّي أُحَامِي أَبَدًا عَنْ دِينِي عَنْ إِمَامٍ شَادِكِ الْيَقِينِ نَجْلِ النَّبِي الطَّاهِرِ الْأَمِينِ. Abbas says, even if you cut my right hand, I will not stop defending my religion and defending my Imam, the grandson of Rasulullah. Allah, the traditions tell us that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas performed jihad, holding the flag in one hand and with the same hand using the sword to defend himself against the enemies. At the other time, or at the same time, the archers are still showering arrows on Abbas until he passed another tree. Allah, Allah. There was one la'in by the name of Hakim bin Tufail. The traditions tell us as Abbas passed this palm tree, Hakim bin Tufail came and he struck the left arm of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. The sword of Abbas falls to the ground. He catches the mashk with his teeth. He balances the flag, he balances the alam between his chest and what is remaining from his forearms. At this time, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he motivates himself. He says, Ya nafsu la takhsha min al-kuffar wabshiri bi rahmat al-jabbar ma'al nabi as-sayyid al-mukhtar kad kata'u min bimagdihim al-yusra am kad kata'u bibugyihim yasari fa aslihim ya rabbi fin nari hari. Abbas says, oh Allah, oh, he says, oh nafs, they have cut your left hand. Do not be scared of the kuffar. Rather, glad tidings that you are going to meet your Lord. And when you will meet Rasulullah, Allah, Allah, Abbas says, oh Allah, because they cut my left arm, Allah put them in the fire of hell. Abbas doesn't have any arms to defend himself. At this time, Shimr orders all the archers in their thousands to shoot arrows towards Abbas. Abbas faces hundreds of arrows with his chest. Abbas faces 100 arrows with his chest. From these 100 arrows, I want to tell you only about 2 arrows.
The tradition tells us that one of these arrows pierced the eye of Abu And there was one arrow that came. Abbas cannot defend himself. How can he defend himself when his arms are at a distance from him? The second arrow that was launched, Ya Shia, put your hands on your heart. This is the arrow that pierced the mashk of Abbas. I don't know what must have gone through the heart of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas when he watched the water drip down towards the sun. At this time, the narrations tell us that Abbas stopped moving. He was sitting on his horse without his arms, with an arrow in his eye, and the water dripping down. Abbas doesn't know, should I move towards the tent or should I go back towards the Furat? While he was sitting on his horse at that position, Allah Ya Shia, the traditions tell us, فَضَرَبَهُ لَعِينٌ بِالْعَمُودِ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ. The traditions tell us that somebody from the enemy came with a tent pole and he hit Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas on the head. Wa musibata wa Abbasa. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas fell down to the ground shouting out, Alayka minni salam, Ya Aba Abdullah. At this time, the tradition tells us, Sayyid al-Shuhada came running towards Imam Hussein. But the Hamid ibn Muslim says that I looked at Sayyid al-Shuhada when he ran towards Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. For every 2 steps Imam Hussein would run, Imam would fall down. Every 2 steps he would run, Imam would fall down. Hamid ibn Muslim says that I went a little bit closer and I heard Imam Hussein say, Al-an inkasara dhahri. Imam Hussein says when he heard the call of Abbas, oh Abbas, now my back is broken. Imam Hussein runs and falls until he gets towards a distance that is close to Imam Hussein. Hamid ibn Muslim says that at that time I saw Imam Hussein pick something from the ground. I went close to see what is it that he might pick from the battlefield. Hamid says that when I went closer, I saw Imam pick up one of the severed hands of Abbas. He kissed them and put them on his forehead. Allah, my last sentence for the Masa'ib, Ya Shia, put your hands on your heart. Because the traditions tell us that when Imam Hussein went towards Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and he saw him in this state, lying on the sand without 2 hands and with an arrow pierced in his eyes, the Maktal narrates something very painful. The Maktal describes the head of Abbas. It says, the Maktal tells us that there were pieces of flesh from the skull of Abbas that were falling onto his shoulder. مات بحسين يا حسين